And very happy that this worked out. It was a little bit last minute, but we put everything together to have Ryoko Adachi, Veronika Schäpers, and Maki Aizawa. Maki co-curated with Simon Blattner and Barbara Wells the Sonoma Valley Museum of Art exhibition. And it's a really beautiful exhibition of Japanese artist bookmakers, a book becoming art, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And there are flyers over here if you haven't been out there yet and you'd like to take a flyer. There's activities, kind of workshops that are related to it. I went to the opening and I was really surprised to show up in Sonoma at the museum and see this line out the door and down the block to get in this exhibition. So it was very well received there. So congratulations for that too. I also want to thank the Colophon Club. They co-sponsored this event, as many of you know, because many of you are members and got the notice, I think. And it's really nice to have a collaborative relationship with the Colophon Club. Mary Marsh is here. If you would like to give a suggested donation, I think it's between $5 and $20. It goes to benefit both clubs. Well, we're not a club, kind of. CODEX Foundation and the Colophon Club. But the wonderful food and drink that Jen and Jonathan helped to arrange earlier today is supported by them as well. So thanks to the Colophon Club. And of course, thanks to Dina and Jonathan for helping set everything up and just their amazing work with the CODEX Foundation. So I think we're about ready to get started. I think I've mentioned everything. I'm just really grateful that this worked out. To have someone from Tokyo, from Germany, to come and give this wonderful presentation about their work. And Maki will assist with translating too. So, okay, we'll maybe spend a minute hooking this back up.
Yeah, so thank you very much for the invitation, Inge. I'm really happy to be here. It's my first time at the new CODEX Logan Book Center. And I'm also very grateful to the Colophon Club to sponsor this event. Maki organized within 2 years this exhibition in Sonoma, and she traveled to Japan, visited many book artists, and she got a really interesting selection, I think, from artist books, which are not often seen outside of Japan. So it's a very interesting selection. It's book objects, it's really interesting. So whenever you have the opportunity to visit Sonoma, it's highly recommended to go to the museum and have a look at these exceptional exhibitions. So I'm really happy to be part of this, although I'm not Japanese, but I lived in Japan for a long time and worked a lot with Japanese materials on Japanese topics. So the talk tonight, we decided to have the title Inside Out, and it's sorry. Yeah.
It was. I was decided to go to sleep.
Yeah, it was. So it's Inside Outside, from Germany to Japan and back. So in this talk, I would like to introduce my way of working by the means of actually 5 examples. You see 6, but it's actually too long if I show all of them, so I quit one. And 3 of these books are from my time in Japan, and 2 are from my time in Germany. And while living in Japan, and even now, my position as a foreigner makes me very aware of these sociological phenomena. So I really like to observe and have great interest in observing other cultures. And that was also when I came back to Germany, I really had this kind of observation view onto the culture where I came back to. So in the beginning, I would like to explain my professional education, because that also helps to understand my way of working. after 3 years apprenticeship as a craft book binder in Germany, I studied for 5 years in the book department at the University of Art and Design in Halle, Burgiebichenstein, an art school that was founded 1915 and was connected closely to the Bauhaus. So there were these classes as they had in the Bauhaus, textile, jewelry, and one was book. And after the wall fell down, I got to know about the school, and that was in 90, and I immediately applied because this was not existing anymore in the western part of Germany, and I was very happy to be accepted there as the first Westerner, and it was quite interesting for me to study there. It was a beautiful school, or still is. And after graduation, I got a scholarship and moved to Japan, where I worked for 1 year with Naoaki Sakamoto in Tokyo. He is a paper dealer, and he's also a paper artist. So he dyes paper with natural pigments, and he has an atelier in Niigata, where he also makes paper, and one in Hokkaido. After the scholarship, I started to make my own books. I still work with Sakamoto-san, but I also started to make my own books at home. And I started really from scratch with a very small desk and just very limited tools. So it was a desk which maybe was half of this portion here. And when I was sitting on my chair, my partner was sitting backside, and we bumped into each other, and it was very limited. But also, this limitation was somehow a challenge for me. It was not only a restriction, but it was really a challenge to bring me to new ideas. After 15 years in Japan, I moved back to Germany in 2012, but never lost my strong connection and curiosity. So almost all of my books are collaboration with writers, which share my love for Japan. The only thing which I do not in my books is writing, but I choose to write, to work with, collaborate with writers. So I will now explain the first book, which is one of my most well-known books, and I think many of you know it here already. It's 26 degrees, 57.3 minute north, 142 degrees, 16.8 minute east. This was the location in the northwestern Pacific, where the Japanese marine biologist Tsunemi Kubodera took the very first pictures of a giant squid alive in this natural environment. And with Grünbein, a writer I really like very much, and I actually collaborated in my diploma, so we had a long relationship before. He was inspired by a note in a German newspaper about this discovery and wrote a poem about the Architeutis, the scientific name for the giant squid, and he mailed it to me. So at that time we were in constant exchange of emails and letters, mainly letters actually. That was a little bit pre-email time. And that was the starting point for this book on deep-sea creatures. Until these first images were taken, all of the scientific surveys were based on dead squids washed ashore, or parts of them found in the stomach of sperm whales. And their giant size evoked the myth of an aggressive monster. You know Jules Verne, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, and Moby Dick by Herman Melville. When Kubodera published the pictures in the Proceedings of the Royal Society, that was not only a scientific sensation, but he got worldwide attention in mass media as well. You see on the right image on the right corner, down corner, that he has a long tentacle. So he took the images at random actually. It's in really deep sea water. You cannot dive there. So he hangs a camera system with a hook which has some prey, and he hopes he can attract some squids, giant squids, to this prey, and at the same time a camera takes images every 10 seconds. So after one day he takes up the camera, and then he had this long tentacle on this hook, and he knew there must be something on the camera as well, and that was for him really a big luck, because with this tentacle he could measure the size of the giant squid, because in the deep sea you cannot really figure out how tall it is. You don't have a measurement, and if you only have images you cannot publish in the in the proceeding of the Royal Society, because it can be Photoshop or whatever. So he had the scientific proof, which was really nice, and it came that the squid approached the prey and he got stuck with this long tentacle into the hook. And he fought for 1 hour until this tentacle ripped off, which was bad for the squid, and for it was really good luck. So in autumn 2006, I visited Kubodera in his laboratory. I was very happy that my husband knew someone who knew someone who knew someone who knew Kubodera. So he introduced me to him. You cannot just go in Japan and ring the doorbell and say, I make books and I'm interested. So I got introduced and I was very happy that I could visit him. And he told me about his discovery and the reaction on his publication. And also not forgetting to point out his really deep disappointment about the Japanese media that concentrated mainly on the questions if this giant squid is eatable and how many sushi could be made out of it. So that was for him a complete ignorance. When we met, Kubodera showed me also pictures and short films of squids he recorded in depth between 2,000 and 3,300 feet. So these were not the giant squid, but different ones. On these images, the unpracticed spectator only sees dimly silhouettes of squids, but at the same time, you start to sense the diversity of life in such darkness. And this gave me the idea to use the interaction of transparent and opaque pages for the book. So for me, it was very interesting because it was like a ultra scan where people who know it, they can say, oh, point out this and this and this. But if you don't know these images, you just sit in front and see a blur. So that was the same impression when he got really excited showing me his short films and he said this is this species and that species and you see just something just from right to left disappearing. But it was he's a very, very nice person actually. So I decided to use the data and formulas I received from him together with some nautical charts as illustrations for the book. I think it's important not to show an image of the giant squid, but let the reader imagine its giant size by looking at the printed charts and colors. In search of an appropriate paper, some difficulties arose. A beautiful sample that I brought back from a trip to Shikoku 10 years ago was not available anymore since the papermaker had died and no one succeeded his skills, which is actually something happening in Japan quite often in recent days, that paper extincts. So because the paper makers don't have successors who are willing to succeed or to take over the workshop or who are really not able. There's a very nice paper which I used in the okonomiyaki book Bichugampi, where the grandson of the paper maker, he really tried hard for several years, but he never reached the quality. And I think after 5 or 6 years, he just said, I cannot do it, and he quit. So that was a really sad story because he tried his very best, but this paper is now even gone. So this paper was not available, but I finally got a bigger amount of old Toshaban Genshi, a very, very thin Gampi paper, which was used to make stencils for mimeographic. This paper was exactly what I was looking for. On the one hand, it's very thin and transparent, and on the other hand, it's so firm that once it was printed with a dark color, it got really opaque, which you can see on the next page. It also attracts to a very fine and rustling tone. So here you see that it gets really dark and opaque. And each page of the book consists of a double spread paper fold in the front, like a French fold. These fold pages are printed completely with a transparent medium, a color ranging between gray, blue or black, as well as transitions of these colors. These pages are cut horizontally, pulled apart a little bit, and thus make visible the inserted single sheets. So what you see here with the circle is inserted in the folded page. And actually the circle is like this size, and it's like a plate, and that's the size of the eye of the giant squid actually. Yeah. On these sheets I printed the data Kubodera surveyed, as well as the nautical charts that are often only partially visible. These pages with their stripes remind the reader of horizons and depth contours, and at the same time give a glimpse to the normally invisible variety of the deep sea world, as if light up with a torch. These tranquil and colored pages are interrupted by 6 double-spread, very pale pages, printed with 3 poems in German on the left and the Japanese translation on the right side, as you can see here by Dus Grünbein. And what you see here is the very first poem which he sent me with the title Architeutis, which is the scientific title of the giant squid, name of the giant squid, not title. This book is stitched to a flexible cover of clear vellum, and the first page contains the title, the last page the imprint, and both are visible through the clear material. By its natural warping, the organic character, by its natural warping and its organic character, the vellum sets a very harmonic antipole to the technical image of the inner pages. And all the books look a little bit different because this material is quite difficult to make. It took me in total 2 years to get all this clear vellum material because there's only one workshop in England who does this very, very thin, transparent vellum. And they looked all differently. The book itself is kept in a very compact box made of 4-point-inch acrylic glass in the style of preparation. And by this it seems to be cast in, and the heavy box forms a beautiful contrast to the light white and fragile book. So from the deep sea now we go to the highest mountain of Japan, Mount Fuji, and this book is one of the two which is shown in the Sonoma exhibition. And we also have copies of all books here. If you have later, not of all, not the squid, if you have questions about them, we can open and show you. So I always wanted to do a collaboration with Cees Notenboom, which is a Dutch poet who wrote a lot about Japan as well. And I finally could make the contact to him, and he did send me a poem with the title Mount Fuji and the topic Mount Fuji. And in the beginning I hesitated for a while because this topic seemed too obvious. So it's really the first impression, or the first thing when you go to Japan, it's Mount Fuji. So I really was not sure if I want to work with this topic. But on the other hand, the poem was really beautiful, or is really beautiful. And so I decided first to find out what Mount Fuji is today for the Japanese, and where one can find traces of its popularity. So I shortly after went to Japan, and on my first day of research, while having a walk in Aoyama, I found so many Fujis that on one point I stopped to take pictures. And here you have to know, in June 2013, Mount Fuji was added to the UNESCO World Heritage List as a cultural property, not natural property, but cultural property. And this was one reason why back in 2016, when I started this research, so many works was available, and it's less now. I also have to admit that I took also many pictures and images of the mountain during the years, and I remember very well how happy I've been when on my way to the station I was able on clear days to see Mount Fuji, so that is really something very special. And I did also a fast survey among Japanese friends, and it showed that everyone has really deep feelings for this beautiful national symbol. For sure, I wanted to integrate this permanent presence of Mount Fuji in daily life into my project after finding so many goods that are sold in the shape of Mount Fuji, and decided for a kitchen sponge that is not only beautiful, but it was also advertised as very practical cleaning tool. And I have to say, so this sponge I bought like this. It's not made for this book, but I found it and I bought many of these sponges to insert into the box. The book is presented in a box together with these 5 sponges, which is made of Polonia wood, and it's a custom-made box. It's a traditional package material for precious goods like ceramics or kimono. When you open the box, you find first the book, and underneath you see the 5 kitchen sponges. So I was really happy that it fit. I had the book and the size first, and it really fit together very well. Another image which came into my mind when I started to think about the project is the famous series of woodblock prints by Hokusai, the 36 Views of Mount Fuji, which you may know, I think. And the most well-known of these prints is the Great Wave of Kanagawa, also known just as the Great Wave. This is a motif copied countless times and as present as the image of a blue Mount Fuji with a white snow cap. But nevertheless, Hokusai's woodblock prints are really impressive, and Notenboom's poem immediately evoked Hokusai's series in my mind. Both Notenboom and Hokusai describe the volcano from different perspectives, expressing their deep admiration. So they walk around and just describe the mountain, from one in words, Notenboom, and Hokusai does it visually, and express their beauty from this different perspective. Every print of the 36 views of Mount Fuji, except the first one, the wave, has this characteristic color gradation at the top part, resembling the sky. So you see it here very well. These intense colors and gradations have fascinated me long before working on this book. So whenever I've seen these landscape woodblock prints, I was so fascinated about these color gradations because they give such a dance and they can express just with a few strokes if it's winter, summer, cold, night. So it's very, very simple way of expressing a lot. So I decided to print these color gradations in my book. I took the complete series of 36 views as a model and printed these gradations by hand as monoprints on handmade Japanese Mitsumata paper. My intention was not to print an exact copy of a Japanese woodblock print, which I'm actually not able to do so, but to evoke the association of a woodblock print. And in combination with the printed title Fuji on the transparent cover, especially the image of Hokusai's 36 views. So for sure it shouldn't be any image of Mount Fuji in the book. That's similar to the Squid book. You have to imagine also a little bit. And the paper is a handmade Mitsumata paper, shiny and so thin you see the prints on the reverse side as well. And connecting all prints like in a long journey. The reader has to turn the 36 pages with prints until in the very end Notabohm's poem appears. The verses are rotated 90 degrees and the last word of every line is printed in bold. By this every verse looks like a small image of Mount Fuji with a snow cap. So Fuji is always shown like this triangle with a white cap, and that's what I tried to show as well with the typography. The next book I want to show is Okonomiyaki by Ryoko Adachi, and this is the second book in the exhibition in Sonoma. Ryoko Adachi lives since '82 in Germany, and she writes in both languages. And she's well known in Japan and in Germany for her poetry and for her novels. So she writes a lot. I admired her since I read her very first book. And it was always my dream to collaborate with her because she lives in Germany and writes on Japanese topics as well on German topics, and I was living in Japan, so I really wanted to work with her, and I finally met her, and she came by accident to a book fair where I was showing my books, and we immediately got in a very nice conversation, and she immediately said, yes, let's make a collaboration. And since today we have actually made 3 books together. And the idea for this book came up when I read an essay she wrote in another big book with a lot of different essays. And I will now read what she wrote and gave me the idea to do this Okonomiyaki book. So, sushi, which symbolizes light and luxurious simplicity, clarity and health, represents Japanese cuisine in the US and in Europe. Although this dish is popular in Japan as well, it shows only one aspect of the multifaceted cuisine, and it's easy to find Japanese dishes that juxtapose the aesthetics of sushi, like for example katsukade, schnitzel on rice, served with curry sauce, pizza manju, Chinese dumplings filled with various pizza ingredients, or the pancake-like okonomiyaki, for which you can use almost all ingredients you like. Mayonnaise, brown sauce and seaweed powder are combined as well as tuna and fillet steak. This pancake tastes much better than you would think. And in Japan, it is more popular than sushi. It is not the case that mainly rich people, critical intellectuals, or the young avant-garde eat sushi, whereas the pancake is food for rather simple people. Also, it is wrong to say that sushi represents good old tradition, where other dishes derive from bad foreign influence. The anthropologist Kunio Yanagita says that modern sushi, like many other Japanese dishes as well, has no long tradition at all, because food in Tokyo has changed drastically in the last 100 years. People in Tokyo were always keen to try new tastes and implement them into their own cuisine. So this was what I read, and I really found it fascinating, and I invited Ryoko Adachi to do an okonomiyaki book. And that was in the beginning just like a title. I really didn't want to make an okonomiyaki book, but it happened to be the topic. So the theme of this essay, this is actually Ryoko Adachi when we met first time and we had okonomiyaki together, is the idealistic and blurred perception of the Japanese culture in other countries. And after reading it, I asked Tawada-san to create an okonomiyaki book together. Tawada's text is not a cooking recipe, but an accumulation of text fragments that can be mixed freely, like the ingredients of okonomiyaki, put into new order, or even be omitted partially, just as you like. And when she did send me her first version, the first version was the German one, she said, oh, you can just rearrange all the text, and if you don't like one of these fragments, just put it away. Which I didn't do, but she was very playful and very open. She said, just do what you want. Which okonomiyaki means, okonomi means do as you like. So that was also a topic of the book. So I started to play around with collage of the ingredients she's describing in her text fragments, and many other things I cannot show today in this short time actually. And I finally ended up with these sauce patterns that appear when you pour sauce and mayonnaise over fried okonomiyaki. Everyone has his own method of pouring the sauce, like simple spiral forms, subtle lines, or even comic strip-like characters. So it's a very different style how people made this. I myself made a mixture of glue and ink, which has the texture of the popular Japanese Kewpie mayonnaise, and filled it in an empty bottle of this brand. Then I asked friends to paint their patterns on a cardboard, so I got a wide range of variations. So here you see some of the original patterns in exhibitions. So these were all, actually this book, all the patterns inside were done by friends of mine, people I knew, whomever I met. I handed over these cardboards and the mayonnaise sauce. I transferred 15 of these patterns into polymer plates and printed them on very smooth and shiny Bichugampi paper. Every pattern faces a detail of an enlargement, which brings the sauce patterns onto a new aesthetical level. The blue-black printed pages are overlaid by another layer of Gampi paper with a circle printed in transparent white. This adds another level of abstraction, but evokes also the image of an okonomiyaki, since the dish as well consists of many layers. The German version is a long accordion fold with the text printed in box pleats. The theme of layering is also shown in the Japanese edition. The Japanese text, which is not a translation of the German text, consists as well of 15 fragments like its German counterpart. So when I received several weeks after the German text, the Japanese ones, I was a little bit komatteru? How do you say?
Komatteru.
Verzweifelt.
Verzweifelt, yeah. What is verzweifelt? No, I felt some not disappointment, but some pressure. I said, okay, I was expecting something she's writing in Japanese on German culture, maybe about sausage or bread or whatever. But it was also okonomiyaki. It was the same 15 fragments, the same 15 ingredients, but completely different styles she wrote in. So in Japanese, her language and her style of writing is completely different than in German, where she observes the language and she's like a scientist. So, okay, I had to find a way to make another edition which is consisting of the same ingredients, but has a different outcome. So this edition is also consisting of Gampi paper, letterpress in black and transparent white. It has the O-shape sauce patterns, box pleats and sauce patterns, but the outcome actually is very different. Just okonomi as you like. Additionally, there are 2 sheets of oiled paper printed with a Japanese calligraphy. The original was painted by the owner of a traditional lantern manufacturer. In this workshop, paper lanterns for restaurants are made and painted. You can read Ryoko Adachi on the right hand and okonomiyaki on the left hand. The yellow, smelly paper evokes the odor which one finds stuck into his clothes after spending some time in an okonomiyaki restaurant. Because you fry on your table on a griddle plate, it's really smelly if you spend there one evening. These lanterns are hanging in front of restaurants with traditional food, and the guest can see by the sign on the lantern what kind of dish is served inside. So traditional restaurants in Japan, which are small, they serve mainly one kind of dish. So you can see outside if it's soba or somen or okonomiyaki. All 3 parts of the book are protected by fold cardboard jackets and put together in an acrylic box printed with a matted circle shape and the title in German and Japanese. which you can see here. So you can, again, it's layering. You can put them on top of each other in a box. This is another collaboration with Ryoko Tawada, Jin Shinjiko. Tawada's text, Jin Shinjiko, begins with a moving train, feeding the rhythm into our ears with every gap between the tracks, like da-dum, da-dum, da-dum. Then it comes to a stop, because it's forced to a stop, a human accident. I first heard this in a reading and was deeply impressed by her completely different voice and way of writing in Japanese compared to her German writing. So when she reads German, she's very subtle and has a low voice, but in Japanese it's like very strong and very rhythmical, so I really love this. And I have a reading of her where she reads the poem, which you can now listen to. I hope it works.
人身事故
Yeah.
ででんででんでんでん電車やで電車が止まります。人身事故、妊娠事故、降りるときには降ろすときには人身二身の缶詰のように並んだ線路に沿ってゴロゴロ並んだ二身の死体、したくない、あれしたくない、これもしたくない、したいのしたくないよ、心配事さえない、心身の健康、精神の健康を宿る、生死宿る、心身しみる、死体の腐敗、心身、雪が死体に降りかかる、事故の処理、自分の処理、闇を急ぐ処理、ぐっしょり濡れて救助、赤くバラバラに、バラ肉の断面の霜降りに肉トロ買ったんだな、勝てないのはトロの赤みにまるでバラの花咲く、裂けた花びらの赤が黒ずみ、人心ではない人の身、しんと冷たいリンゴの芯を朝噛んだ時にこめかみにすでに感じ始めていた。人間やめて人になった。私は人、あなたも人。人心抱えてみじんこっぱ。人の視界は狭い。避けられなかったか。避ければいいのに。とあなたは言うけれど、言われても世界いっぱいに電車が迫ってくる。待ってくれ。待ってくれない。
So even if you don't know Japanese, you can understand this rhythmical sound and the play with her words. So building on the Japanese term for personal injury, jinshinjiko, or human accident, Ryoko Tawada plays with words and syllables relating to body and soul, self and person, human and corpse, rhythm and silence. She gives a sound to the fast, orderly arrangement of local public transport in Tokyo's subways, a machinery to which every passenger is subject and one that is constantly being tested and perfected. Inspired by the station maps for individual lines that are posted in the corresponding train stations, the Japanese text is arranged vertically and reads from right to left. Alternating with the English translation, which is set horizontally on the reverse of each page. The two different reading directions create a dual format that is also repeated in the photographs preceding and following the text. The book can be viewed and read in landscape as well as in portrait format. The images show scenes from Tokyo subways, illustrating not only their inescapable seeming closeness, but also the countless measures taken in the last few years to prevent incidents involving personal injury. So all of these images which you see are part of the book as well, such as barriers along the edges of platforms, colored lights at the ends of the platforms, and emergency telephones. Due to their transformation into binary images, the photographs seem two-dimensional and strongly abstract, an effect that is further reinforced by the transparency of the thin Gambi paper and the resulting overlapping effects. Some of the photos printed in grey are underlaid by colored areas in the dominant shades of Japanese subways, grey like the concrete of the tunnels and yellow like the many signal stripes on the platforms. And all these shapes are coming from these oblong window shapes of the tube, which you have seen in the images before as well. The binding, made from Mitsumata cardboard dyed with coarse pigments, is folded at the foredge and printed with the title in a circular symbol. the emblem of the individual subway lines. The centered cutout shows parts of Tokyo's system map, which is printed in a hidden spot in the inside of the jacket. The book jacket has a used ticket tucked into it. They are protected by a transparent sleeve made of acrylic glass. So here in the cutout you see the metro cards, which were used in end of the 90s, beginning of the 2000s, which were not reloadable, but you just buy them in a certain amount and you use it, and afterwards you throw it away. So I collected many of them. The next and most recent project is a bit difficult to introduce. It's a deconstructed and completely encrypted book. Any explanation of the concept and idea generation would actually provide clues to the original, which I want to avoid at all costs. But that at least explains the somewhat strange title, which seems to consist of nothing but random terms, like grain, morning, raccoon, peace, job, barrel, hamster, nature, exercise, unable, fire, crush, image, patrol, pony, aerobic, key, pet, ship, squeeze, bargain, move again, ability. As with all my projects, the starting point for 2 to the 11th power was a literary text from this book, a short Japanese story that I found so fascinating more than 10 years ago that I wanted to have it translated into German, so I could use it for an artist's book. Unfortunately, when I asked for permission to print a small edition and make a German translation for the original text, I encountered a series of problems. At first, the publisher that had the rights to the original text stubbornly ignored every request, and then ultimately refused, saying that it didn't see the point of such a small-scale artistic publication. Actually, the only process, yeah. I was really angry. Next, the translator and I contacted the author's heirs ourselves, but despite multiple attempts, there was no response from her either. So for the first and only time in my experience, I had to shelve a project that I had already started, because I didn't think it could not work out. So in the summer of 2022, I was organizing my archives and stumbled across the extensive preliminary work for the project, which I still found fascinating. It reawakened my ambition to find a way around the printing permission that was never granted. I made various attempts to use the text in a way that would produce a readable result without violating the copyright, and finally decided to have it professionally encrypted. Jörn Müller-Quade, professor for cryptology in the Karlsruhe Institute for Technology, did this for me. The original Japanese text and its English translation, which already existed, went through a complicated process that in cryptologist speak can be simplified as follows. So I try now to make it clear. 2 passwords created by 2 different people are imported and suitably combined at random. This creates a binary key. Next, the text is imported and is now a binary object in the computer memory. Next, the text is compressed. Since compression is inefficient for small input volumes, a comparison is made to see which is the shorter. The compressed text, which in turn is also a binary object, or the binary uncompressed text. The shorter version is then further processed. Next, a separate password is derived for this plain text and then encrypted. The ciphertext is binary. Next, the ciphertext is divided into 11-bit blocks. In a Japanese or English list of 2048, which means 2 to the 11th power entries, each number from 0 to 2047 is assigned a word. For each block, the 11-bit value is then interpreted as the number n, and the nth word in the dictionary is displayed. The list can be used to transcribe computer-generated coincidences as readable text. The result is a long sequence of individual terms. They are printed in monospace font in the book and bear no relation to one another. That makes them particularly appealing, as they bring up a series of associations and suggestions to the reader or viewer. The same is true for the illustrations. 10 collages of objects of varying size, all of which are described in the original text. They accurately represent, as far as possible, what I pictured while reading the text. These various objects were photographed, and I scaled them all to the same format, regardless of their proportions. similar to the non-proportional monospace font, before dismantling and collaging them. As with the encrypted text, individual elements can be identified. Sometimes they also produce unusual and provocative combinations, even though the original story is no longer visible. The third section has to do with colors that are mentioned in the original text. 20 hues are printed as individual stripes across 4 pages. Here too they are the shades I imagined while reading the text. As with the objects, they represent my subjective response. So I think every one of you would choose slightly different colors. So if you read something like a pale blue morning, I have a very special image, and I'm sure yours is different from this. So this is very subjective as well. All the 3 components, illustration, text, and color stripes, are printed on different Japanese papers, each in keeping with the different characters of the prints. Thank you.
Incredible.
The book is bound in a semi-transparent cover with encrypted embossed text for the author and title. So this encryption makes really short terms very long. It's the author and the title. And actually the author is a very short name and the title is also very short. It's quite interesting. It is protected by a semi-transparent sleeve showing parts of an interior view from a 2-point perspective. The sleeve is related to the story too. Like the illustrations and colors, it is a very subjective association. The encryption and deconstruction process is echoed by the puzzle slipcase, a 3-part object held together by magnets that is intended to seem confusing when disassembled. Instead of the very long encrypted title, it is embossed with the number 2 to the 11th power, which refers to the number of terms in the dictionary that are used to translate the encrypted binary code into individual words. I have the book here, so you can play with these magnets, which is quite interesting when they pop together and fall apart. The book is intended to work as an independent project, separate from the original, and to inspire people to think about perception, terminology, and interpretation. The original text is merely a starting point from which something new has been created and no longer plays any role in this book. So that's my part here. I quit the book at the High Rise, which many of you know already, but I think we already have used many time, and I would like to give over to Ryoko Adachi and Maki Aizawa for the next presentation. Thank you very much. So if you have any questions, we do it afterwards. Inga, or what yeah.
Sorry?
If you have any questions, we do it afterwards, or?
Yeah, I think that sounds good.
Yeah.
Questions?
こんにちは。Hello. I am Ryoko Adachi from Tokyo, Japan. よろしくお願いします。私のブックアート本を作り始めた初めの頃はドイツで学びました。
So she was studying in Germany when she started. Sorry, I was studying in Germany when I started studying book arts.
これはドイツで初めて作った本です。
I created these books for the first time in Germany.
私は英語も苦手なんですけれども、ドイツ語も得意ではありませんでした。
I couldn't speak English nor German.
ドイツ人の友人と出かけてもあまり会話に参加できませんでした。
I couldn't really join the conversation with German friends.
長い冬が終わった季節であり、ドイツはどこでも美しい植物があちこちに見られました。
After the long, cold winter time, I could find beautiful flowers.
私は会話に加われなかったので、みんなと出かけた先々で草花を摘み集めました。
So I started picking some flowers, wild flowers in the springtime.
摘み集めては持ち帰って、それを押し花にしました。
And every time when I pick them, I bring home and make pressed flowers.
それで本を作ることにしました。
And I decided to create a book.
この本は薄い和紙の間に押し花を挟んだものです。
This book is composed with thin washi papers and have flowers between the papers.
ページの右下には日本の詩に使われる季語という言葉をローマ字に読みにして印刷しました。
At the bottom of the right hand, 春のボラ、
空。
空。Spring sky, spring 空ですね。Spring sky.
スカイ。表紙は季節の言葉を点字に訳したものを使いました。
On the front page, I used Braille for the front.
なぜ点字を用いたのか。
Why did I use Braille?
それは外国で言葉の不自由さを体験したことで、目や耳に障害を持つ人の気持ちが分かったからです。
Because I was in Germany, not able to speak, and I felt the same way.
慣れない言葉のコミュニケーションがどれだけ大変かが分かるようになったからです。
I understood how hard, how difficult it was to be in the environment I couldn't communicate really well.
表紙には7つのバリエーションがあります。
On the front page, there are 7 different variations.
紙やプラスチックなど素材を変えています。
Materials are plastic or paper.
素材をいろいろ変えています。
So she varies. I change materials.
すべての本のページは違う植物が収められています。
So every page I put different type of flower.
この本を作った後、私に興味を持ってくれる人が増えました。
After I started making these books, some people started to be interested in talking to me.
ドイツ語がうまく話せなかった私にとって、この本の植物が小鳥の言葉の代わりをしてくれました。
So I feel that these books are flowers in these books started to speak for me.
これは私の住む町、東京の風景です。
This is a scenery where I live in Tokyo.
コンクリートで覆われて緑は多くありません。
There is not much greenery because there is lots of concrete.
ドイツからこの町へ戻ってきたとき、私は少し窮屈な感じがしました。
When I came back from Germany, I felt cramped.
その反対に、アスファルトの間から覗く緑や空き地にはびこる雑草が生き生きとして感じられました。
I found very lively weeds coming from the concrete in Tokyo.
それでドイツで言葉の代わりとなった植物を使い、東京でも植物の本を作りました。
In Tokyo, the way the plants were helpful to me, I started creating books with plants back in Japan.
これはそのま美術館に展示している本です。
This is a book exhibited in Sonoma Museum of Art.
この本は空き地に生えている雑草がモチーフです。
This book's motif is from the weed in the field.
夏には背丈ほどに成長し群生し、冬には地上に這いつくばって寒さをやり過ごします。
So, in the ごめんなさい、最初のところ。
夏には背丈ほどに成長して、
During the summertime,
冬には、地面に這いつくばって。
in the wintertime, it stays on the ground, but this weed grows really high in the summertime.
その様子を毎年見て面白いと思いました。
Every year, I felt really, it was very interesting.
それでその大きさと勢いを本にできたら面白いなと思いました。
So the dramatic change, I felt to express that in the book.
広げると 1.5 メートルほどになります。広げると
When I opened this book, 広げると本を広げると。
はい、そうです。本を広げると。
This book is about 1.5 meters.
モチーフの植物とほぼ同じ大きさです。
The size is about the same as the weed.
素材は和紙にデジタル印刷した後、蜜蝋に、浸しています。
I take a photo of the weed and print and put in the beeswax.
で織本をさまざまな形状に吊り下げたインスタレーションを行いました。
I did the installation with accordion books, 織本。
まるで本になった植物が生き生きと蘇ったように感じられます。
I felt that the books became the plants and looks very lively.
展覧会中に朗読家が作品の間を歩きながら植物図鑑を読みました。
During the exhibition, during the gallery presentation, somebody walked around and read the poem from Plant Cyclopedia.
アーティストブックは時にインスタレーションとしても表現できます。
Art books can be for the art installation.
他にも植物をモチーフにしたいくつもの作品を作りました。
I made more books based on nature.
東アジアでは古くから自然に自分の感情を重ねて表現してきました。
In East Asia, from old age, we used metaphor for our feelings from the nature.
私にとっても、今生きている私にとっても、自然が私の言葉になっています。
To this date, I feel that nature is ごめんなさい。Sorry. ごめんなさい。もう一回お願いします。
今生きている私にとっても自然が、私の言葉になっています。
So the nature is my expression at the same time.
次の作品です。次の作品です。
Sorry. Next work.
ここに何が書いてあるか分かる人いますか
？Do you know anybody who can you guess what this is? What's writing?
日本で展覧会をしたとき、何人もの人がこれを読もうとしました。
In Japan, during the exhibition, Japanese people started to wanting to read this as a calligraphy.
日本のカリグラフィーのようですが、木の枝です。
This looks like a calligraphy, but it's actually a twig.
その形は面白くて記号のように見えました。
It looks very interesting and it looks like sign.
紙の上に並べてみると日本の書のようでした。
When you put them on the paper, it looked like Japanese calligraphy,
でも読むことはできませんでした。
but we couldn't read it.
でも私には何か声が聞こえるような感じがしました。
For me, I felt that there is a song from the twigs.
言葉がどこから生まれてくるかについてはいろいろな考え方があります。
There is a way of how do we know where the words text come from?
私は鳥のさえずりのように音楽的なものではないかという言葉が考え方が気に入っています。
I feel that it comes from the song of the birds.
木の枝を写真に撮って、文字のように配置して印刷をしています。
So I put twigs and then I print it. Sorry, ごめんなさい。
はい、
もう一回お願いします。
文字、木の枝を写真に撮って文字のように配置して印刷しました。
So I took a photography of the collection of twigs and then put them as if it's a calligraphy and then print it.
同じテーマの別の作品もあります。
With the same theme, I created that different book.
タイトルは鳥の歌。
The title is The Song of Birds.
そこには音はありません。
There is no sound.
形から皆さんに鳥の声が聞こえることを期待しています。
I hope that there is you could hear the song of the birds from the twigs, from the writing.
このように自然の形、文字や言葉は作品の大切なモチーフになっています。
In this way, the nature is bringing a great motif for me.
次の作品ですが、今私たちの文明はとっても混乱しています。
The next piece, I'm going to talk about next piece, and now it's very chaotic. Our life is very chaotic.
私はそれをテーマにした本も作っています。それがこの本です。
I'm using a motif, or theme about chaos.
この本はジャックと豆の木というタイトルです。
This book's title is Jack and the Beanstalk.
遺伝子組み換え食品が世界に広まっています。
Genetically modified food plants are all over the world.
その様子をジャックと豆の木の大きな豆の木に例えて私がテキストを書きました。
So I'm writing and modifying the writing myself in text in this book.
7メートルの2枚の長い箸をジグザグに折り編み上げた構造をしています。
So there are two sets of paper with 7 meters, and two of them are folding together like a zigzag.
DNA は二重螺旋構造をしています。
So DNA, there are two spiral lines.
DNA のような本ができないだろうか、考えているうちに出来上がったものです。
I was trying to create something like DNA spirals, and then this came.
完成した本はパッチワークのように表と裏が交互に現れたりします。
The finished one, it's like a quilt, like a patchwork, and the front and back comes alternatively.
実はもう一冊豆の木の本があります。
This is also a book about beans.
ジャックと豆の木を作るために私は豆を作りました。豆を栽培しました。
For the Jack and the Beanstalk book, I grew beans.
この豆の葉にはよく虫がつきました。
For this piece, there are lots of insects on the leaves.
遺伝子組み換え植物とは違いました。
It was different from genetically modified plants.
虫の描く独特の形はとても興味深かったです。
It was very interesting to see what the insects create.
それで私はこの本を作りました。
That's the reason I made this book.
本の形をしていませんが、フラワーという作品を作りました。
Doesn't look like a book, shape of book, but I made a book called Flower.
よく見ると花びらはすべて昆虫のシルエットをしています。
When you look closer, every petal of the flower looks like an insect.
ジャックと豆の木を作る中で植物と虫は共生をしていることを学んだのです。
During creating Jack and the Beanstalk, I noticed that the coexisting of plants and the insects.
Next text. 形の言葉です。The language of shape.
The next one is language of shape.
この本には2つの冊子と1枚のプリントが入っています。
In this book, there are 2 books and 1 paper.
テキストは私が書きました。
I wrote the text.
テキストには2人のサイエンティストの言葉を引用しました。
I used quotes from 2 scientists.
1人のサイエンティストは雪の研究家です。
One scientist is specializing in snow.
雪の結晶は天から送られた手紙と言いました。
He quoted the crystal snowflake is from the letters from the sky.
詩の裏には結晶を文字のように配置して印刷しました。
So back of the poems, she put crystals in the back. I put the crystal in the back.
三つ折りのページは長さが90センチです。
So I bind it into 3, and the whole length is 90 centimeter.
縦型に開きます。
So it opens this way.
アコーディオンプリーツに和紙で固定されています。
And it's made with accordion pleats.
見開きのページは上下で異なり、ページをめくることに変化を与えます。
So it varies the way you open. So it's you could 見開きの
ページは上下で異なります。ページをめくるごとに変化を与えます。
So as you open, you see the various page in this book.
ページをめくることに変化を与えます。OK。で、2つ目の冊子は雪の研究をしたサイエンティストのテキストです。
So the second section is from the text.
彼の随筆からアラスカや北極の風景描写を抜粋しました。
This scientist talked about Alaska.
それに極地の風景を合わせることもできそうなんですが、いいですか？
じゃあそこでやりますね。And the scenery from Alaska, I was going to input in this page.
私はキッチンで撮影したヨーグルトの写真を合わせています。
I used a photo in my kitchen from the yogurt.
この冊子を手にした人がヨーグルトの小さな風景と極地の古代 広大な景色を重ねて手のひらから長いですねヨーグルトの小さな風景と極地の広大な景色を重ねて見てもらいたい。
I hope that you could see the scenery of Arctic Alaska in the yogurt.
まあ、手のひらから宇宙までのつながりを想像してくれることを期待しています。
I hope that from your palm it connects to the universe.
3つ目は薄い和紙に結晶の写真が印刷され折りたたまれて入っています。
The third piece is on the very thin washi Japanese paper with the crystal images.
この本は2021年サンフランシスコセンター・フォー・ザ・ブックとサンフランシスコパブリックセンターで開かれたレクラメーション展にも出展しました。
This was exhibited at Declamation.
レクラメーション、多分皆さんがご存知。
You know about
maybe
Declamation?
It's an exhibition at the Center for the Book Arts in San Francisco.
Yes,
with-
yes,
Under the title Reclamation
Yes.
and 21. You say.
21 yes 21
And then somewhere
Maybe
else.
some of you know about this
Chicago.
exhibition.
Yeah. Oh, no, I was going to say hello, but I didn't want to irritate you before you give the talk.
そう、世界では分断、争いごと、自然災害が起こっています。
There are lots of chaos and natural environmental problems in the world.
私たちが人続きの世界に住んでいることがもっと共有されればいいなと思っています。
I hope that there is one through humans and we could share.
駆け足での説明となりましたが以上です。ありがとうございました。
Thank you.